Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boss Economics World, the only show that takes the dismal science of economics and turns it into a full-blown circus of chaos, tariffs, and trade wars. I'm your host, the guy who's been yelling at graphs since 2008, and today, oh boy, do we have a spicy economic meatball to dig into. Grab your popcorn, your calculators, and maybe a stress ball, because we're diving headfirst into the tariff-fueled, Trump-charged, China-led global trade shakeup of 2025. And trust me, folks, this is not your grandma's supply chain drama. Alright, let's set the stage. It's August 19, 2025, and the world is a mess. Shocker, I know. President Donald Trump, back in the White House and swinging his tariff hammer like Thor on a caffeine bender, has turned the US-China trade war into a full-on economic cage match. But here's the kicker, folks. While Trump's busy slapping 60% tariffs on everything from iPhones to fortune cookies, China's not just sitting there eating dim sum and crying into its GDP reports. Oh no. According to the brainiacs at S&P Global, Beijing is pulling off the ultimate economic pivot, ditching the West and cozying up to the global South faster than you can say Belt and Road Initiative. And let me tell you, this is not just a trade shift, it's a global economic plot twist that could rewrite the rules of the game. So, buckle up, because today we're breaking down the economic madness behind this story, from the surface-level tariff tantrums to the deep, dark underbelly of global commerce. Let's go! First things first, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the tariff wall in the room. President Trump, in all his infinite economic wisdom, has decided that the best way to make America great again is to slap tariffs on Chinese goods like he's playing whack-a-mole at a carnival. And folks, these aren't your run-of-the-mill tariffs. We're talking 60% on over $200 billion worth of Chinese imports, according to the U.S. Trade Representative's latest 2025 report. That's everything from electric vehicles to solar panels to, yes, folks, your kids' plastic dinosaur toys. Merry Christmas, indeed. Now, the stated goal here is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., protect American jobs, and stick it to China's economic dominance. Sounds great on a campaign poster, right? But here's the problem, folks, tariffs are like economic boomerangs. You throw them out there, and they come right back to smack you in the face. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, U.S. consumers and businesses are already paying an extra $80 billion a year in higher prices thanks to these tariffs. That's right, your grocery bill, your car payment, your Netflix subscription? All going up, while the average American worker's wages are flatter than a pancake at an IHOP clearance sale. And here's the kicker, China's not exactly rolling over and playing dead. Oh no, they're hitting back with their own tariffs on U.S. goods, think soybeans, whiskey, and Harley-Davidsons. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. agricultural exports to China have plummeted by 45% since 2018, costing American farmers an estimated $27 billion in lost revenue. So, while Trump's busy tweeting winning, in all caps, farmers in Iowa are selling their tractors on eBay just to pay the bills. Economic genius, folks. But wait, there's more. While Trump's busy turning the U.S.-China trade relationship into a bad reality TV show, China's pulling off the ultimate economic flex. According to S&P Global's latest report, released on August 19, 2025, for those of you keeping score at home, China's exports to the global south have doubled over the past decade. That's right, folks, while exports to the U.S. grew by a measly 28% and to Western Europe by 58%, China's trade with Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and Africa is growing faster than a TikTok influencer's follower count. And in the past 5 years, since Trump's first term, this trend has gone into hyperdrive. Now, for those of you who flunked geography, the global south isn't just a fancy term for countries with nice beaches. We're talking about developing nations, think Vietnam, Brazil, Nigeria, Indonesia, countries that are hungry for investment, infrastructure, and cheap goods. And China's stepping in like the world's biggest Walmart, offering everything from electric vehicles to 5G networks to solar panels, all at prices that make Western competitors look like they're selling gold-plated iPhones. According to S&P Global, China's trade with its 20 largest global south partners now accounts for 20% of those countries' GDP. That's right, folks, China's not just selling stuff, it's becoming the economic lifeblood of entire nations. And here's the cherry on top, more than half of China's total trade surplus now comes from the global south, compared to just 36% for the US and 23% for Western Europe. So, while Trump's busy building tariff walls, China's building trade bridges, and let me tell you, folks, those bridges are paved with yuan, not dollars. Now, let's put on our economist hats, or, in my case, my tinfoil hat, and dig into the why behind this madness. Why is China pivoting to the global south? Is it just to spite Trump? Well, folks, it's a little more complicated than that. Let's break it down into 3 juicy economic nuggets, shall we? First up, China's economy is slowing down faster than a sloth on a coffee break. According to the International Monetary Fund's latest 2025 projections, China's GDP growth is expected to clock in at just 4.1% this year, the slowest pace since the 1990s. Factory activity? Growing at the slowest rate since November 2024, per the National Bureau of Statistics. Property and infrastructure investment? Down the drain, with real estate giants like Evergrande still drowning in debt. And exports to the U.S.? Slumping for the 4th straight month as of July 2025, according to China's General Administration of Customs. So, what's a superpower to do when its economic engine is sputtering? Easy, find new markets. Second, Trump's tariffs are pushing Chinese firms out of the US market faster than you can say supply chain disruption. With 60% tariffs on Chinese goods, companies like Huawei, BYD, and Xiaomi are saying, you know what? Forget the US, we'll just set up shop in Vietnam, Mexico, or Kenya instead. And that's exactly what they're doing, folks. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Chinese foreign direct investment in the global south has surged by 78% since 2020, with manufacturing hubs popping up everywhere from Indonesia to Ethiopia. So, while Trump's busy protecting American jobs, he's actually handing China a golden ticket to dominate global manufacturing. And third, let's not forget the geopolitical angle. China's not just selling widgets to the global south, it's buying influence. In June 2025, President Xi Jinping announced that China would eliminate all import tariffs on almost all African nations, a move that's expected to boost African exports to China by $10 billion annually, according to the African Development Bank. And that's on top of the $60 billion in loans and investments China has poured into Africa since 2020, per the China-Africa Research Initiative. Meanwhile, she's been jet-setting to summits with Latin American and Southeast Asian leaders, signing trade deals faster than you can say Belt and Road 2.0. So, while the US is busy alienating allies with tariffs, China's building a global trade empire, one handshake at a time. Now, folks, every economic story has winners and losers, and this one's no different. Let's start with the winners. China's obviously at the top of the list, raking in trade surpluses and geopolitical clout like it's going out of style. And the global south? They're loving the cheap goods, the infrastructure investment, and the fact that someone's finally paying attention to them. According to the World Bank, Chinese investment has helped lift GDP growth in sub-Saharan Africa by an average of 1.2% annually since 2020. Not too shabby, right? But here's the flip side, folks. Not everyone's happy about China's global shopping spree. Local industries in the global south are getting crushed by cheap Chinese imports, and workers are starting to push back. In Nigeria, textile workers have staged protests against Chinese imports that have decimated local factories, according to Reuters. In Brazil, steelmakers are crying foul over Chinese dumping, per Bloomberg. And in Vietnam, environmental groups are sounding the alarm over Chinese-funded coal plants, per the South China Morning Post. So, while China's busy building its trade empire, it's also stirring up a hornet's nest of resentment. And let me tell you, folks, hornets don't mess around. So, what does all this mean, folks? Are we witnessing the birth of a new global trade order, where South-South trade becomes the center of gravity and Chinese multinationals are the new kings of commerce? Well, according to S&P Global, the answer is a big, fat maybe. If current trends continue, China's dominance in the global south could reshape global supply chains, reduce the West's economic influence, and turn the US dollar into a relic of the past. But, and this is a big but, folks, there are risks. Pushback from local industries, geopolitical tensions, and the ever-present threat of a global recession could throw a wrench in China's plans faster than you can say debt trap diplomacy. And let's not forget the US. While Trump's busy playing tariff whack-a-mole, the rest of the world is moving on without us. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the U.S. share of global trade has fallen from 14% in 2018 to just 11% in 2025, while China's share has risen to 15%. So, while we're busy building walls, China's building bridges, and folks, those bridges are looking pretty darn sturdy. Alright, folks, it's time for the Boss Economics World Hot Take, the part of the show where I yell at the camera and pretend I have all the answers. So, what should we do about this tariff-fueled, China-led trade shakeup? Well, for starters, the US needs to stop treating tariffs like a magic wand and start investing in its own competitiveness. That means pouring money into education, infrastructure, and green technology because let me tell you, folks, China's not waiting around for us to catch up. According to the World Economic Forum, China now leads the world in renewable energy patents, with 41% of the global total in 2024, while the US is stuck at 19%. Wake up, Washington! And for the global south? Well, folks, it's time to play hardball. Sure, Chinese investment is great, but it's not free. Those loans come with strings attached, think debt traps, environmental degradation, and political influence. So, developing nations need to negotiate better deals, diversify their trade partners, and invest in their own industries. Because let me tell you, folks, being a pawn in China's chess game is not a long-term strategy. And for you, the viewer? Well, keep watching Boss Economics World, because we'll be here to break down every twist and turn in this global economic soap opera. Until next time, folks, keep your wallets close and your tariffs closer. This has been Boss Economics World, where the tariffs are high, the stakes are higher, and the economic drama never ends. See you next week.